Hi, it's Tansel here. Now, my last coaching session, we talked about mindfulness and memory. Now, as you know, mindfulness has been around for a while now, and a lot of people are doing it. And it's great, it's life changing. There's a lot of benefits to being more mindful, and so on. However, not many people know how to essentially use it along with memory strategies. And once you do that, it makes mindfulness even more powerful. So I just want to get in and give you just a couple of tips on how to make mindfulness work for you in a more memorable, powerful way. So let's take a look at mindfulness. Now, what is it? It's essentially, and I'm not going to probably do it justice here, but the way that I see it is it's a concentrated effort from your brain to really focus on something and be mindful of it. So, for example, if you're eating, often it's automatic, right? We just sit down, eat, and we don't even realize the taste after halfway through if we're eating really quickly. Used to happen with me and eating dessert, right? So if we're mindful of it, we're going to sit down, and usually, grace or prayer or something like that puts you into the state of being mindful of the food and being grateful of it. But if you're just sitting down automatically, just before you start eating, you realize that, wow, this is food. I'm going to take a bite, let it sit in my mouth, maybe get the taste, get the sensation, maybe get the smell beforehand. So you're utilizing all your senses, sight, feeling, all of that stuff, trying to engage that in a deeper way, right? So how do we make that even more memorable? Well, if we're tasting something, we can anticipate the taste. Right? The anticipation will give us a sensation in the brain. Once we do taste it, if it equates to the same thing, great. It's going to make it even more powerful. If it's something different, our brain's going to go, oh, wow, that was sort of different to what I imagined. So while your brain's talking to you, that means it's engaging even more. So it's like memory training. When you start to train your memory, you'll start to build that pattern in the brain. You're starting to make it stronger. So it's the same thing here. You're strengthening that connection, that narrative in the brain. When you're smelling that food, you're essentially strengthening that. So a technique that I use a lot, especially in my books, and I've been reading about this a lot, is smash and scope. Now, if you don't know what smash and scope is, definitely check it out, or I think it's in one of my articles on LinkedIn as well. It's about making things more memorable. So I use this for being more mindful. So what smash and scope is, for example, is you can use your senses, you can use color, you can use imagination, you can exaggerate. It's just an acronym for these type of things. So I is for imagination, N is for number, right? And what I do is I take this acronym and I apply it to things I want to be mindful for. So for example, if I'm listening to someone, and this happens a lot in my coaching, before probably my weakest skill that I had was listening skills. I was really terrible, and I think I've made a few videos on that before about how terrible I was with listening. Now, in order to really get into active listening, I try and use this smash and scope. So when I'm listening, right, someone's saying something, I'm trying to visualize it in a greater way. I'm trying to see, okay, what pictures come into my head? If they're talking about a contract, right? If someone's in finance or law, they're talking about a contract, right? I try and picture an old parchment and maybe there's a fountain pen signing the contract, right? So I try and see imagery when I'm hearing things or listening to people, and that's really, really powerful stuff, right? That adds to the mindfulness element, and the more you do this, the less distractions you get as well. You won't notice things going on around you because you're so focused on making a stronger image in your head, right? And that's really powerful stuff. What else can you use smash and scope for being mindful? Well, I did mention eating, I mentioned sort of listening, any real task that you think of, maybe driving a car, right? You could switch off the radio and all those things, because we can easily multitask in the car, right? If you've been doing it for a while. But if you can really sit there driving, right? Sit there driving and making sure that your hands are on the right way, if you've got a right way, that the road, how are you going on the road? Are you going at the right speed? So you're really focused on that one act of driving, right? You're not focusing on other things. Other areas you can think of doing mindfulness is essentially what I do is teaching, right? Be mindful of, okay, what am I actually teaching? What are people going to get out of the session? So, and you're not just asking these questions, because questions can often just be statements, right? What you're really trying to do is get an image and a feeling out of that. And once you've got that image and feeling, that's what really connects you, and that's what creates focus and energy, right? So that's really powerful stuff. When you're meditating, for example, right? When you're meditating, you're focusing your energies on that one thing that you're doing, right? So mindfulness, meditation go together. Now, if you can do that with things that essentially you're doing automatically, that's not serving you well, that makes it really powerful. So, for example, you're getting up in the morning and you're eating, right? Now, if you don't eat well, right, mindfulness is a way to really assist you. Why? Because you're set in the way, you've turned that switch on and say, okay, I'm thinking of health, right? Instead of going for that crappy breakfast you were going to have, now you're mindful of, okay, I need to have a good breakfast because this is how I'd feel, right? Once you have that good breakfast, you're going to feel this way. You're going to visualize yourself throughout the day feeling amazing, right? This is the kind of stuff where memory and smash and scope helps with mindfulness, because now you can use that exaggeration, you can use color, you can use feeling to make that breakfast even better for you. That choice of picking the breakfast, right? Mindless thing that I do is sometimes just make myself coffee or go buy a coffee automatically because I love it, right? But if I'm mindful, I'll probably say to myself, you shouldn't be having that. It's going to damage you, right? So sometimes it just happens automatically. I have it, and halfway through when I'm drinking, I was like, shit, I shouldn't have had that, right? So being mindful really helps. Now, what could I have done? Before that, I could have created a little trigger. So as soon as I want coffee or about to touch the coffee machine or go into a cafe, say to myself, okay, I'm being mindful of my health, right? How do I want to feel? How am I going to feel after having a coffee, right? Remember that moment, and I have to exaggerate it. Well, I have a condition called Crohn's disease, right? So it's an inflammatory bowel disease. If I have a coffee, I get damaged by it. I get in pain, right? So if I have that coffee, I have to visualize me in pain, literally, right? And that way, that sort of deters me from having that. Now, it's not going to happen all the time, right? So I do have my cup of coffee. But that's just one scenario of essentially tricking your brain. So being mindful can really help you of tricking your brain, of doing the things that you really need to do, and also relaxing the body as well. Like I said, mindfulness and meditation go together. So once you start using it in a way that is mindful, mindfulness is mindful. As soon as you start doing that, then you start getting into realms that essentially start to go, wow, I didn't realize that was wasting my time, or I didn't realize that I was doing this damage. Even speaking to people and you've got your phone in front of you while you're speaking, or you're chatting and you're doing email. Yeah, we can still concentrate while doing it. And I know women can do it a lot better than men can because we can only focus on one thing at a time. Yes, that's true. That can happen. But what are you really doing? You know, if you got rid of that phone and now you're fully focused and concentrated on that person, right? You're having this engaging conversation and you're really delving deep and focusing on what they're saying. You haven't got time to get distracted by your phone now because you're actively listening to that person. So that's what we should look at. We should look at mindfulness, but using all our senses and imagination and color and movement, all these things. So as soon as we start doing that, using memory principles to mindfulness, that's when you're going to see really powerful results. So hopefully you've taken something away from this video. I'll try and get some more of these out the way as well. But in the meantime, feel free to reach out, message me if you like. I'm always happy to help, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.